Okay. Hi, everybody. This is the Open Space podcast called The Dip, episode. And my name is Nolan Quintanilla, and we have some new faces with us today.
Hi, I'm Victoria Reyes.
I'm Sanilo.
Today's episode of The Dip, The Scoop, is going to be about racial dysphoria and everything that comes with that.
Yeah, so the first question we need to ask ourselves is, what is racial dysphoria? This definition that I got from the American Psychiatric Association says that race dysphoria involves a conflict between a person's physical or assigned race and the race which they identify with. It also goes on to say people with race dysphoria are described as being uncomfortable with the race they were assigned with, particularly uncomfortable with their skin color or being uncomfortable with the expected hardship associated with that race.
Yeah.
So what kind of thoughts does that invoke when you guys hear that?
So obviously we are very strategic with the way that we pick the people who are going to talk about certain things. The three of us specifically have really had similar feelings in common when it comes to how we're being raised. And I think the biggest thing that comes along with why we have racial dysphoria is whitewashing. You know what that term is. It's basically a survival tactic that people of color have instilled in themselves, and now it's a generational issue that, you know, back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, like continuing on this idea of being more professional and white and classical and smarter was instilled onto people of color so they could seem more successful. And, you know, our grandparents, that was instilled in them, and then that was instilled into our parents. Now it's being instilled into us, but we're at a point in our lives where we're able to deconstruct that. So as far as like how that correlates within me, like I said, is I have racial dysphoria because of my parents unknowingly whitewashing me, you know. My grandparents were very strategic with the way that they did it, but my parents didn't know that they were doing that because that's just how they were raised. That's how I feel racial dysphoria.
Yeah. For me personally, like my mom is like fully Caucasian, like all this like England heritage. And my dad is the one that brings like the Mexican and Spanish and Native American as well. I still like don't know anything about my Native American culture really. I haven't been able to like go to any events or really see anything about it. But like, and I've like my grandparents didn't teach my dad Spanish growing up because they thought it was more important for him to know English. Yeah, and so he is the one that brings all this ethnicity into my blood, and then he doesn't know Spanish himself. So so he didn't even like teach us anything about it really. So I like don't know a lot of like Spanish and stuff. So that's been pretty difficult for me, especially like when I go to visit his side of the family and they are speaking Spanish a lot of the time, and I think they know at this point that I don't know what they're saying. But they've been pretty supportive about it, and I definitely want to try to learn more about that. So I know that I feel incredibly whitewashed for sure.
I feel whitewashed by the system. Because it's not like my family did anything because of it. Like my parents were very well known in their Black heritage and their Black culture, especially my dad, like raised me from an early age. It was just like simple conversations. I would come from school, like elementary school, and they'd be like, oh, did you have a good day? And I'd be like, yeah, we did this, we colored and stuff like that. And they'd be like, how many Black people are in your class? And I would be like, I never really like noticed or thought about it or stuff like that. So then I just had to be more aware, and it was because it was almost like a safety mechanism. Like if I'm walking around in a place I don't know, like how many Black people are there, not in the sense that you can automatically trust strangers no matter what they look like, but like, you know, at least you have some relation in some way. But regarding racial dysphoria specifically, definitely through the system, because my heritage has been so lost, but also is so rooted right here. Like, the farthest I know is my dad said his like great 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 grandmother was Native American, and we're pretty sure she was Cherokee and stuff like that. So we're like, yeah, like we were really from here. And then like we're also black, so we're also African American, but we don't know anyone who is like directly from Africa. Like, yeah, we have this relative, they're from Nigeria. Like, we're not like that. We are African Americans. My mom is from Houston. My dad is from Jackson, Mississippi. His parents are from Jackson, Mississippi. And yeah, there's the great 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 grandmother who's Native American. Like, that's as far as I know, which can kind of be. It can really be not just disappointing, but like sad, upsetting, like very upsetting, because when I started going into, I think I want to say middle school, but it was probably high school, that I started meeting other black people who weren't just from America. Like, a lot of people from Nigeria have come here, and it started making me think about it more. And like, even going to stores or something like that, if I see, I remember going and seeing like African apparel or something like that, or patterns, and no one else, no other race other than black people can be the closest one to, like, yeah, I can get that because that connects to me. But even black people who don't know where they come from, we are like, is that okay? Like, can I get that? Do people know? And it's not like, because like, it's black people, you don't look at somebody and be like, oh, you look African, we can tell black people. No, because we're all from like everywhere, you can't really tell. But at the same time, when it only takes a few minutes for them to assume that you might have like direct African heritage, or you might have grown up somewhere in the US or something like that. So that disconnect from my African heritage can seem very upsetting, and the only comfort that I feel like black people have is black culture. Black culture and African culture are very different things. Black culture is stemmed from the black people who lived in America, who had nothing. Their culture was ripped from them. Their rights and human rights were just ripped from them. So music and our vernacular and our style, or the way we are, and our hair, like, that all is our black culture, from nothing to something, basically. So that's the only comfort we can have, because it's not that we don't have culture, we just don't know where it is. We don't know whose it is, and if we do know, we don't know, unless you have direct family, you don't know if you can get in with that, because there's also separation between black people and African people. Like, there's a bunch of separations in my community.
Yeah. I've had that conversation with Irene. Have you ever met Irene?
I met her like a couple times.
I love
Irene Njimbure. I hope I said that right. Damn, Irene, I'm so sorry. But she was a recent musical theater major, and she is like from Africa. Like, she was born in Africa, and she came to America when she was really young. And she tells me all the time, she's the statement that she's afraid of black people, but she knows that there is a distinction between the two of them.
Yeah.
Because she knows that like black people's culture is so rooted in America, and she knows that she's completely distinct. But I mean, it's really interesting to hear from like black people to be like, I don't understand you either. But then to literally the naked eye, you guys are very similar to each other, but not at all. That's really interesting.
Like, we can, like, I have tons of friends who have like African roots, like direct African roots, and we have no problem being friends. Like, I was friends with a good amount of people who have direct African heritage until I started learning socially that there is a disconnect by black people and African people. And I haven't gotten a chance to talk to any of my friends about it, because those are the type of friends I don't really see anymore, because I go here and there's like, but
like, where are the people of color?
I look in the mirror and I'm like, there you are. That's me.
and that girl, best friends.
Yes, best friends. Can't stand her, but love her. Really now, she's great. But yeah, it's very unfortunate, which is why some Black people celebrate Kwanzaa, and me and my dumb self should have come here prepared talking about Kwanzaa, because of course I would talk about Kwanzaa if I'm talking about racial dysphoria, and I knew my research. I'm gonna go off the dome. So Kwanzaa,
Kwanzaa in this thing's mind.
it started, and I'm pretty sure the 1960s.
Look it up.
Yeah.
This is real, guys. This is real footage.
Real time.
Thank God we have the internet.
Oh my goodness.
Go ahead and say what you think, and while
Then
we're
we'll fact check you.
Okay, just like actually you don't know your heritage. But Kwanzaa, I believe it started in the 1960s.
1966.
And it was, look at that. And basically, there was a Black man, I forgot his name, who started Kwanzaa. And it's solely for Africans can celebrate it too, but it's solely for African Americans or Black people who feel disconnected from their heritage. So that holiday that starts directly after Christmas, like it starts on the 26th, and there are 7 days of Kwanzaa, not 8, because
It goes until the 1st.
Yes, till the 1st. So that's for people who have a disconnect with their African heritage, and there's multiple different days, like there's Ujoma, there's Kujichukulia. You always start off with Habari Gani in the middle of the day, which is like, what's the news? And you might say Ujoma, which I think means unity. Like each one has different days. So there's one that's like support Black businesses. There's one that's like love thy neighbor. There's one like there's certain days when you celebrate it, and my family didn't celebrate it for most of my life until my second older sister a few years ago, like maybe 4 years ago, I don't know. She was like, oh my gosh, all this stuff about Kwanzaa, like you remember that one episode from the Proud Family? Yeah, like okay. Like, and they were just like, what's the news? Habari Gani? And like she was like, we should celebrate it. We were like, okay. So she was really into it, and she like bought candles, and she's mainly the one that leads it in the family. But I do want to continue celebrating it, because you don't have to, it's not this big thing. We don't just all wear apparel and do like whatever and stuff like that. Like you just celebrate it in your own way, the way you can. So like supporting Black businesses, we might go to like the Black owned cookie store across the street from our house, and just buy something from there, or like give each other gifts from Black owned businesses, Black owned cosmetics or whatever. So that's how we celebrate it, and it's pretty nice to know that even historically, like it's nice, but it's also unfortunate that even in the 60s they were like, yeah, we still feel this disconnect as well. So we're gonna make our own holiday, because even African people were like, yeah, like y'all shouldn't feel this disconnect. I remember when there was like, I don't remember if it was the election, the running between Trump and Biden, or if it was some political, it was something that happened that made was it Ghana? I can't remember names. But there was this one country in Africa, I'm pretty sure it's RBG, and the leader there, she was like, Black people have been oppressed in the US for so long. It's time to take our children back. It's time to come home. If you want to come home, we have a space for you. There are no closed doors. You can come back. So like even now, like we still know we're still rooted in racial dysphoria. So sometimes it's funny to think like, oh yeah, like Black people, we built this, we made America, and like y'all would be literally nothing without us. It wouldn't look the same without us. This is this. We're the it status that everybody wants, but nobody wants to talk about. And it's based on our Black culture. And then like when we sit by ourselves, it's just like, I'm lost. Mm-hmm. I still feel marginalized in the sense, like I can't be African, and then I can be Black here, but I'm not accepted to be Black here. So like its own way of feeling marginalized. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I my family, which is something like, I don't know, you might also experience it if you know the history. My family actually immigrated here in the 1920s. And so I'm like a fifth generation American, but obviously to any person who's ignorant, they are like, oh my god, Nolan just immigrated here because he's Mexican. You know, like I've gotten that so many times, like, actually, and I've talked to some white people, they're like, oh, my family came here in the 50s. I'm like, so actually, my family's been here longer than yours, so that's fun. But I think, I mean, I know that my family is so deeply rooted in American culture, and specifically Cholo and Cholita culture, which is Chicano culture, which is like, you know, you think of orderly homes, the like whatever, but that stems from gangster culture, which is prevalent in Italian culture, but we can't even begin to get into the fact that Italians and Mexicans have so many parallels, but no one wants to talk about that.
No,
Anyways,
I'm so confused.
they're like literally the same thing, just different font, different melanin.
Melanin, yes.
Different
Italian font.
Literally, like Chicano culture and Italian culture are so the same. Anyways, but Chicano culture with like cholos and cholas, that's kind of like the culture that my family comes from. So it's very like this like east side kind of on the border vibe of you know, this hustle and bustle of being like American, but still being so deeply rooted in Mexican culture because a lot of those people still spoke the language, they lived on the border, and that has now seeped into like most of Texas and like California and New Mexico. You see it a lot in, you know, everything that's connected to Mexico, that culture. And that's where my culture comes from. But then there's still this, since we are so close to Mexico, we are still so influenced by Mexican culture. And a lot of people, like we know people whose family have immigrated from Mexico just, you know, in the early 2000s, and so they are still deeply rooted in just Mexican culture and don't know anything about Cholo and Cholita culture, Chicano culture, and they feel like there's this sense of disconnect. There's this quote from Selena the movie.
Yeah, I love that movie.
There is this quote from that. There's this quote that the dad says is that he talks about, because Selena's talking about going to Mexico for the first time. She's never been to Mexico. She barely speaks English, but she sings, or she barely speaks Spanish, excuse me, and she you know, just now started speaking in or singing in Spanish, and so she learned it after that. Anyways, her dad is talking to her about, he's like, you can't talk when you're there because they're gonna notice that you're American.
Right.
And she's like, but I'm fine, I know how to speak Spanish. She said, there's a difference. Like, you speak American Spanish and there is Mexican Spanish, and they're gonna get you because the media is really harsh over there towards Americans. And so, but he says, anyways, his quote is that you have to be more American than the Americans and more Mexican than the Mexicans.
I remember that.
So you have to be like on top of your game for everything. And I think that has made me just feel so like scared of trying to even do it, because I'll be at like still Mexican events like quinceañeras or comidas or whatever, and they'll be playing Tejano music, cumbia music, whatever, and they like, I'm still so expected to know what's going on, but I'm like looking at my family, they're the ones that are judging me for not knowing. I'm like, you didn't teach me. What do you mean that I'm supposed to know this? Am I supposed to go do it by myself? I guess I am, because Google search engine exists, but at the same time, like, it would be nice if y'all taught me it instead of just making fun of me for not knowing what's going on.
I relate so hard to that. Oh my goodness. I feel like I was never like ever really immersed in my Hispanic culture, especially with my family moving to Texas in 2011. Like all of my dad's side of the family are like where we are from in Colorado, and so like having that kind of taken away, like it like really just made me like not have any of those kind of experiences anymore with people like that are, you know, from my culture. And so I had this real like struggle like in junior high and high school of like like, am I white passing? I don't feel Mexican. I don't feel like I have this heritage. Like, I remember, like, the first Quince that I went to was probably, like, I think I was, like, 14 or something. Like, I myself didn't have one, but I've probably only been to, like, 2 or 3 in my life, and there have been, like, so many times when I'm like, oh, I'm here, I need to act this certain way.
Yeah.
I need to make sure that people know that, oh, I'm not a faker, right? But I think that's something that we really need to kind of examine and help other people understand that, like, not everyone in the culture, like, has grown up with it and knows about it. So if they judge us about it, that just makes it worse, and it makes us want to separate ourselves from that more, or it makes us berate ourselves more. Yeah.
What you were saying about, like, having to be a certain way at those events is, like, code switching the house.
Yes.
Like,
and like, I would literally be so, like, Brady Bunch around my Canyon, Texas friends, and then when I get around my cousins, I'm like, oh, like I was just so like kookity kaka kuka, and then it would be so weird going back and forth to, like, all of that. And I wasn't that way with my immediate family, but I was that way with my cousins.
Right.
And now I'm letting myself be. I'm trying to integrate all of that, so I'm not code switching everywhere. So I'm just
I know
Nolan everywhere, but
it's very difficult. It's a really difficult thing to do. Like, I remember, I still feel bad about this to this day, but I was a debate kid in high school, right? So so one year the topic was, like, we need to, like, ban immigration, like, from, like, a certain country or something. Like, it was about immigration. And ours was talking about Venezuela. And, like, I was, like, the person that, like, read our whole case, right? And
I can feel like I know where this is going.
yes, yeah, I leaned into it, like, a little too much, and I made myself sound more, like, ethnic and in tune with that part of myself than I actually was.
Yeah.
And yeah, so, like,
she doesn't even go here.
What? No, they're here.
She was talking and, like, reading the case and, like, kind of like dotting my R's, and it was not a good time.
Venezuela.
She said, get it correct.
Yeah, but yeah, and my partner was also, like, she's also of Hispanic culture, so, like, she has that heritage, and so we would get those, like, brownie points, you know, for being, like, that way and talking about immigration, and we would have an excuse to be more passionate about it. So
that just recently happened to me at KCSTF.
really,
When the same respondent who responded to, we have a respondent at the Kennedy Center Honors Convention of Theater, Kukulala, whatever it is, but we just went to this, and we had a respondent for our musical theater institute initiative or whatever, and we basically sang, like, 2 16s, and then we got judged on it, and if you made it to finals, you made it to finals. But when I was speaking with my correspondent about my 16s, I was singing a Golden Age song and then singing another, like, just 1980s movie musical song, and neither one of them are, like, Mexican or, like, Latin or whatever. And he fully goes, I love how you were just so, like, you had this, like, salsa feel and this like Latin, like sultry feel to both of the pieces that connected the both of them. But you best believe I played the white man's game well in that moment. I was like,
yeah,
I did.
I know, it was so icky.
No, but I was like, wait, it kind of worked because I made it to finals, but I just kept nodding and being like, oh yeah, but yeah. And then, like, afterwards, I was like, fuck, you're just perpetuating stereotypes, Dylan. What the hell?
I know, I did not advance, not, like, salty or anything, but, like,
you were like,
no.
Talk more about it.
You're like, so that didn't work for you.
No, but what I was gonna say is that he kind of also did the same thing to me. Like, he kind of, like, docked my acting a little bit, but then he was like, but you brought this, like, really, like, sexy air about you to, like, this other
That's
song
so
that you
weird.
did.
I'm like, I'm not a minor, sir, but I feel like one, the way you're talking to
The
me.
way, yeah.
God, I wish I was 16 right now so I could sing in prison.
Yeah, that was not a fun time.
Yeah, that was nasty.
But yeah, and that's not what I was trying to do.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
it was not what I was trying to do.
And I was the only like person of that culture in like the thing, like the people that he was responding to.
Same, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, it just rubbed me the wrong way, dude.
So
It's like,
But I think I think that also like it also further pushes the notion that like
Latin spicy.
people are going
right?
to see us as this, but then they sit down and have a conversation with us and they're like, oh, I don't know, have you, either one of you, ever been called a coconut? Do you know what that is?
I've been called an Oreo.
Coconut,
That's
yeah,
the same,
so
yeah.
basically I guess the brown equivalent to Oreo is coconut, which refers to being brown on the outside, white on the inside.
Yep.
Has also, this is another question. I know you have questions, but let me just ask this one. This
No,
might be a quick one. Have you guys ever, has your you thinking that you're speaking eloquently has been equated to you sounding white?
Let's talk about it. Let's 100% talk about it.
Yes. People are like, you sound so intelligent, and you're like,
Lord.
oh, so you're like, you just sound white, and I'm like, no, I sound smart, bitch.
No,
Fuck it.
like it's so funny because I've seen a bunch of Black people talk about this because I know that, like me personally, I know that I can be very, very goofy, but very, very mature, or like I know how to talk and this is whatever. So some people, like there's a difference between being like, man, like I like what you just said. Like what you just said, that was very, very good. It's very true. And then talking about why, instead of being like, you were just so well spoken when you said that, or like you just sounded like no one's ever said like intelligent, but like to me, but I guess like an intelligent way of speaking. And I'm like, why do my people or like any person who is not white have to be the subject of the opposite side of like not being the well-spoken and stuff?
Yeah.
I can vouch for my people and why you might think this way, in the sense that basically, like this is a microaggression in the sense that you're not thinking about what you just said.
Yeah.
I know what you just said, but what you don't understand is the history behind what you just said. If you say that what I just said, I speak so well, or this is this, or like you speak so well for a Black girl, or this whatever, you're basically saying that Black people as a whole, or like the average Black person does not speak well.
Yes.
And you're equating the way that white people speak to the intelligent mind and the intelligent way of thinking, and you're basing it off education and history, because in my history, Black people, when they were slaves, and even somewhat after they were slaves, were prohibited from learning to read or write, because they knew that since humans are all very intelligent creatures, they knew if we picked up on things, we read and we wrote and we like listened and we understood, we would try to find a way out of our oppression, and probably like attack the people that like hurt us and stuff like that, and they were just too scared of it, so they oppressed us. Because like, you know, if you keep a very powerful being in the closet and then it realizes how powerful it is, like it's not going to stay there for long. So when people say that, it throws me directly back to that. Like when you're just so well spoken and stuff. I know you meant like you're just talking about me in that moment, but you have to understand, just because it's like, oh, so you understand, like you know what I meant. No, you don't understand, and I will brand it. Your intention is different than your impact. I understand what you intended. I understand what you meant to say. I'm not dumb or ignorant based on what you just said. I know what just came out your mouth and the meaning behind it, but you don't understand the impact about what you just said and the meaning behind it. So it's very, very, very disrespectful. I don't like, there's different ways to compliment what someone just said. Like, I like what you just said. I totally agree with that. I like the way you put it. That's not bad either. Like the way you put it, like, yeah, I wouldn't have thought about it like that. I agree. But saying like, oh, you're just so well spoken, like you're basically throwing me a curveball, saying like, because now I'm thinking,
did you not expect me to be?
Yeah, did you not expect me to speak well? Like when I came on this stage or on this podium, or I'm just talking to you one-on-one, did you think I was just gonna be like, girl, like, I don't freaking know, like I don't, you know, and I'm gonna be honest with you, like me personally, that just couldn't be me. But like you stay true to you though, like acting black or sounding black. That's another thing. Like when people say like, oh, you don't act black or you don't sound black, you're talking about the stereotypical black person, and then you're saying that someone who might fall into that stereotype is not
Eloquent?
yeah, not
Yeah.
eloquent or something like that. Like just because it's somebody's personality, I don't care if they talk loud and I don't care if they have this I don't care attitude, whatever. That's just who they are. That doesn't take away from their
It doesn't make them any
intelligence
less
or their
special.
awareness.
Yeah.
Like 100%. So when people say that, that is a backhanded compliment. And that's a lot of, and you just have to understand that. No, because you know what I meant. No, you need to swallow the pill and accept it. That's a backhanded compliment. There's different ways to say that. Don't ever say that to anyone that you're well spoken or this. Like, and there's just too much behind it to get away with that.
Yeah. Have you ever experienced that?
I actually have not.
Mm.
Yeah, but also I don't know how much of that has to do with like the whole like maybe white passing kind of thing. But yeah, I've never really experienced that. So it's really nice to hear what you just said.
To bring it back to theater, have you ever, either one of you, ever been asked to do something more ethnically or more urban-esque?
I was one of the only Latino people in my like theater class in high school. So we never even did like any shows like that at all. Like it was kind of like forbidden territory a little bit. So I had only ever played like white characters, which kind of fed into my like self-doubt even more. Like coming into a professional world, like how am I gonna be able to relate to these to these Hispanic characters that I want to play? So that's something that I'm still kind of figuring out, but I'm like kind of taking it day by day with that.
Yeah.
Day by day.
Have you?
I have not experienced that. Like I'm like flipping through the files. I don't think I've ever experienced that. Because yeah, like you said, like I've been to predominantly white schools. In my town in North Texas, there has been like more diversity there than here, but it's still like, you know, predominantly white institutions. Yeah. So we did stray away from that. Like I did have directors that'd be like, man, like I would love to do hairspray or I would love to do the wigs, but we can't because yeah. And we did have a few black people, but like not enough to build it what it is. Yeah. Granted, apparently my high school did the wigs anyways, and they just had the only black girl in the department as Dorothy. One of the scarecrow, he was a black male, but I don't think he was fully in the department. And then everybody else was white.
Wait,
like I said, we have Dorothy.
It's the Wiz, but it's spelled WHIZ.
I don't know what it is. Yeah. So I haven't experienced that, but I feel like I would not be surprised if I experience that in the future with the way that the entertainment industry is. Yeah. If I'm not in a black-led project or a POC or a BIPOC-led project, I think I wouldn't be surprised. I would still try to do something about it. Like, no, like, what do you mean by that? This is this. Like, I'm not just going to sit there and take it, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone was like, oh yeah, like we need you to like just your character, like I love everything you're doing with it and you do have the sass and the stuff, but if you could just make the sass a little more like
amp it up,
ethnic, a little more black. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised because I've heard that I've heard black celebrities say that. I've mainly heard black women say that, but I wouldn't be surprised if black men felt that way as well, especially when you have to play characters that are the antagonist, or maybe not the main antagonist, but it's like, what are you doing over here on my street, and this, and they probably act this way, and they're probably like, put a little more gangster into it, put a little more, like, you know what I'm talking about, and it's like, no, you want to elaborate? So, I would not be surprised, which is very unfortunate, because there's this whole thing with acting black, and it's like, we're not stupid. We know what you mean. We know what you think of the stereotypical Black person, but we're still gonna ask like, what do you mean? Because not all Black people act the same, and typically when you relate it to that, the adjectives that typically go with that is ratchet, loud, aggressive, talkative, and unattractive in like personality or physicality, just big, intimidating, strong, all these things that so many Black people aren't. And if you are, that's not a bad thing, that's just you. But there's just this mindset. And if I can't feel this mindset, then I'm not Black enough.
Yeah.
And if I can't feel this part of my heritage, the gap in my DNA, I'm not African enough. So I'm just like, it's just me, myself, and
I have definitely been asked to do something more, like to do something in a Mexican behavior.
Wow.
It was like it's so funny because it was Texas Theater Musical, and it was the old director. Love him. He's just a stupid old man. Not Stephen Crandall anymore. It was the original not the original, but the artistic director before Stephen. And we were doing a scene where I had to be a literal just like farm cow man, and everyone before me that did it was just doing it in their Texas accent.
Right.
And the director looks at me and he's like, "Is there any way you can do it with like a Spanish accent?"
Oh.
And I was like, I don't speak Spanish. And he was like, "Can you try?" And I was like,
I can't.
and I literally remember, like, I think the line had something to do with like, I had to go on top of something, and I was like, I have to go on top of it. And I was trying. I was only 19 years old. Give me some slack. I didn't know what was going on. And so I was like, and then this director had the nerve to look at me and go, it doesn't sound right. And so obviously ended up just doing the lines with a Texan accent, so I never had to actually perform it more Spanish, but that did happen during the rehearsal process. And it was like one of those ones was like, oh fuck, I've heard of this before. I've heard people going through this, but it's never happened to me before. And then it finally happened and I was like, damn. So yeah, it definitely happens, like you said. And don't be surprised, but I guess be ready for it.
Be ready, yeah.
And I guess I wish that I had the courage to be like, hey, no, that's inappropriate because I don't speak Spanish.
Right.
But
how can we combat that when that like occasion comes up? How do you guys think we can do that?
First of all, that has to do with like deconstructing this idea in theater that you have to be willing to do anything the director asks you to do, which is just so inappropriate now. And I think also with like young performers or performers who are just now getting into it, the biz, as they would say, there's this idea that you have to say yes to everything, but you also cannot be like somebody who speaks up against like what the director is saying. And in that instance, if you sitting there telling the director no and saying that was inappropriate, some might read that as like you telling the director that they're uneducated or stupid or that like their vision doesn't make sense, but in that instance they are your boss, but there's still this idea. I mean, we at WT incorporate best practices and button and fences and gates. We can talk about that later. If you want to know more about that, comment down below.
Button, 2 claps.
But we have to break down that stigma in our head first in order to be able to defend ourselves and then do that. Like I said, I wish Nolan would have said something to be like, hey, no, that's like inappropriate, instead of having a whole moment in a rehearsal space. Luckily, it was just me, my scene partner, and the director in the room, so it wasn't like in front of a lot of people. But my scene partner was like, what the hell is that? But then we were both like, what the hell? So I wish that I would have just been like, hey, that's inappropriate. I don't speak. I mean, I was like, I don't speak Spanish. I tried at least, but I didn't know how to be like, that's inappropriate. I don't speak Spanish. I don't feel comfortable doing that. Also, me as an actor, I don't have that skill in the back of my pocket, and also
Right,
that
right.
skill's not on my resume. Like I don't have Spanish dialect. I have British or RP. You know, I have like Northwestern, whatever. I have those on my resume, but I don't have Spanish dialect on my resume for a reason.
Right.
You know.
Right. I think that's very true. Like, um, even I still don't know if like a black person doing African dialect is not in the sense that it's entirely offensive, but like if African people are gonna be like, you know, you're not like straight up African, right? Like you can't say, because you see on TikToks all the time, like African people who in their skits or whenever they're talking about their parents, they might put on that African dialect, but they know how to talk in the non-African dialect as well, or the typical American dialect, because they were raised here for so long. But sometimes I feel like yes, we both have our like or something like that, but anyways, but like to talk in the African dialect, I don't know if that's 100% okay. But also, if somebody asked me to do that for a role, one, I would 100% try my best to be as accurate as I can to it, and two, I would still question it,
Yeah.
because yeah, like that's not directly me. Like you got who you cast, and if you didn't get, and if I'm not what you cast, let me know so I can walk out the door with the last paycheck that you're gonna give me. Like with with me, I'm trying my best to get into the mindset of being prepared for those uncomfortable situations in the industry that I want to say no to. Because I haven't had many situations, but I have had situations in like elementary school, maybe middle school, and a little bit high school, where maybe some people have made like jokes that went over my head until a few months later I thought back on it, and I was just like, oh, like I should have said this is this. Now I'm upset, and now I'm upset at that person because I let them get by with it. I don't want anything else to go over my head. I don't want anybody to tell me anything, me with little confidence and awareness about it, for it to go over my head. And also, I just think like, yes, it's very, very hard out here for actors. To get into like the industry, get to the position that you want to get into the industry, get yourself known, but you have to stay true to yourself, because if you want the fame and the attention and the accolades and recognition, and you're willing to do anything for it, then okay, you're 100% what this industry wants. But at the end of the day, you're only gonna have yourself, and I don't want to sacrifice myself, and I also don't want the people who look up to me to be like, oh, I loved her in the beginning, but down the line, like she kind of changed and stuff. I want to stay true to myself, even if the people who don't like me, because even the people who don't like me know that I'm 100% me. Because the people who do look up to me, they're like, oh, real talk, like I can tell this is how she is on camera and off camera. Like she is a little more professional on camera and doing interviews, but like off camera, like she's 100% the same. She's not going to change up for anybody. And that's what I like about her, but they only don't like her because she's not willing to like code switch entirely to what they want. And I always say, like, at least my parents have always said, you know, like there are always endless opportunities, there are always other jobs out there. I always think there's infinite amounts of possibilities to get to one solution, infinite amounts. People typically see the few pathways that people have gone through, but there are other ways. Like, I don't know, this is gonna be such a dumb example, but like if I wanted to get this vase that's over there, I could walk up, I could cartwheel, I could get a tractor, pile through, there's so many ways to get that vase. So don't think that it's an end all be all. And one thing I figured out from one opportunity we had from here to go to like the Scotland trip, I didn't have enough money and stuff like that. I was like, no, I'm not gonna go. But you know, they were really advertising that it was a once in a lifetime thing. And I talked to my mom about it, and she was like, well, it seems like a once in a lifetime opportunity because this is the first time that it's ever come into your life. But you just told me that the Scotland Festival happens yearly. It's not once in a lifetime. It's only once in a lifetime if they're literally like, this is the first time and last time we're doing it. But if it's the first time it popped into your life, or the first time you were handed this opportunity, when there are other opportunities, don't just take that. Like, I don't care what your brand is. I don't care who you are. When you take all those labels, you're just a man, you're just a woman, you're just a person, and I don't want to stay under someone's shoe forever. So like, I'm not gonna take that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like that can be a whole other episode of like how to like maintain your like core beliefs and values like in the industry. It'd probably be a whole episode.
Yeah.
I feel like every single episode, at least that I've been in, we have touched on that briefly.
I'll bet, yeah.
Because you're right. It does need to be its own. It does need to be its whole own episode. Like I said, because I know that we definitely touched on it when we talked about gender. Because I talked about it a little bit. Directors have handled my gender in inappropriate ways sometimes. Whatever, and then we touched on it, or now we're touching on it again. But I agree. I think the biggest thing that comes to mind is thinking about Viola Davis and Octavia Spencer in The Help.
Right.
Viola Davis specifically doesn't really love or support the movie anymore because she feels like she was perpetuating stereotypes the entire time. And she says that at the time she didn't know how to communicate her needs correctly, and she felt like it was an opportunity to do that, and she felt like The Help itself is a white savior complex movie. She says she loves the people that are in it, but she doesn't love the movie or how she was portrayed in the movie anymore. And I think that's like the biggest example that I can think of specifically of like when that has happened in the real world. And in Hollywood specifically, I would say any professional environment, Broadway, regional, commercial, whatever, there is no excuse for casting directors to be hiring wrong people.
Logo. This is
If you put out a casting notice, people will come. Like period. Like you don't have I don't understand this whole like nobody was there. I'm like, well then continue your some people have auditions in California and then they go to Chicago and then they go to New York and then they have their auditions at their actual studio themselves. Like there's so many ways to go and find those damn people. And if you feel like you need to have this show with these people, then you need to go find those people specifically. But we are talking about racial dysphoria.
No, there's like one little tiny little spin-off that I just want to say that is very problematic is
it gonna be tiny?
I'll make it tiny. Okay, the voiceover industry, I love it. I want to be a voiceover artist as well. But whenever there's like non-white characters, I'm not talking about aliens and stuff. No, I'm talking about humans, but they're non-white characters. And the artist is not that ethnicity, at all. There's so many black characters that have been voiced by white people, and they sound black. Like they tricked me, and I'm like, whoa, that's a culture shock. So that's weird. Anyways.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. So I think it's also important to talk about the extreme cases of racial dysphoria, where it's where people tend to completely try to abandon their own culture, and I've seen some examples of people
did you say earlier it's racial impersonation or something?
Racial impersonation, it can go as far as that. So I wanted to kind of talk about how stuff like that can play into internalized racism, how some people have internalized that racism so deep that they literally cannot stand to be the culture that they are. Like they cannot stand to be.
The first thing I think about is these white boys that grew up in suburban areas and all of a sudden they're, adopting all of these black people culture traits. And I'm like, your name is Tyler.
Tyler, you just pick it.
Your name is literally Kyle.
Sunset Boulevard.
And your mother wears an apron when she's cooking. You're the definition of the American dream, and you have the nerve to try and impersonate and adopt these black people cultures. And then also on the flip side too is these people of color who purposefully, like my grandparents, purposefully adopt white
that hurts
characteristics and American eyes characteristics and then means to survive, but then they take it to such a point that they start hating their own culture.
That breaks my heart every
Mhm.
time.
I hate it. It's awful. What were you saying?
Oh, I wasn't about to say that. I was just going back to
You were looking at your laptop like
this website that I yeah, because I like happened upon this website when I was researching this, and it was like some symptoms of having like racial dysphoria can be like a strong desire to be rid of the person's race characteristics and like a strong desire for characteristics of like another race, you know. Like, so it's what we experience. I would not go so far as to say that I wish I was white, like for sure. No. But I just think it's important to acknowledge the extremes of that and how that can be detrimental.
I have a question, and if you're like, I don't want to answer that, oh my god, what the hell's wrong with you? The only reason I'm asking the question is because mine is a yes. Open space. There was a point in my life where I was like, I wish I was white. Because I was like so aware. Like yesterday we had a conversation where about femininity, and I unfortunately have been so self-aware, like, and I gained self-awareness at such a young age, and that was incorporated with like my sexuality and my gender and my race, wishing that all of those things were different, and thinking like I knew at a young age that my life would be way easier if I was white, you know, and so I knew that. I knew that. Like there was moments, I don't know if you've ever experienced this or you, where I was like not going outside during the summer because I was like, I will not tan. I'm not going to get tan because I'm not going to show up on the first day of school way darker than everybody else at school. And there's just like all of these moments where I have experienced those moments where I wished I was white just because I knew that my life would be easier and so that I would fit in more at my school, you know? And I hate that. I think about little Nolan, and I'm like, you were so scared all the time. That sucks, you know? And so, yeah, have you ever felt that way?
I haven't, but then again, like it just keeps coming back to me never actually feeling like I was Mexican, like I was Hispanic. So,
Have you, Simone?
I've never felt that way.
I'm alone.
Don't know what that's from.
I was like,
on the couch.
I was like, I wish you guys were white.
But no, I've never felt that way. If I did, my dad would be like, "What? What do you mean? No!" But I know so many Black people who have. Like, if anything, it's common for a Black person to think once in their life who has lived in America or a predominantly white environment to recognize their differences and be like, I wish I was white, I wish I did this, I know so many, like I've had conversations with, just a few conversations with some of my Black friends who have said that. Like, I remember this one of my friends said this one thing that just stuck with me because it broke my heart, but it made sense. She's a few shades darker than me, and she does have some direct connection to Africa, but she was saying how like with her, because like I'm also a dark-skinned woman, but she's even more dark-skinned, so with that she's been called like just horrendous names when she was a child, but she said that, like, you know, whenever she imagined herself in the future, she would imagine, she could only imagine like some white girl, but that would be her. And I was like, that's very crazy. Different. That's very not okay.
That's
because like
extreme.
I was like, that's extreme, because like, and I don't know how she is now. She's like in college right now, but she never like, yeah, she did need to go through some self-analysis and stuff like that, but she didn't just dread being Black, but there was a real longing for not being who she was because of like the things that she had faced. I understand from a point when we were kids, when we were saying reading books or imagining characters, or if they just said, think of a girl and a boy, and they go on this adventure. You would just automatically think of white people because that's automatically the entertainment, the coloring books and stuff like that that we got. I literally remember in elementary school, we were reading The Giver, and we had to do some drawing, writing assignment. I think we were storyboarding it. So I storyboarded what I thought Jonah looked like, and then I showed my friend Tim, and my friend Tim was black. Oh, sorry for the name drop, Tim. You're great.
Not his government name.
You know, but I was like, oh, like you drew Jonah as black, and he was like, well, yeah, he's a fictional character. I can draw like whatever I want because they're fictional characters, and like it's just so crazy how whenever we think of fictional characters, we think of white people and stuff like that. We were in middle school, and I was like, yeah, you know what? Give me that brown crayon.
You literally had your monocle, and you were like, I'm smarter than all.
But yeah, so I understand by media, it might affect how your brain sees things. Like when we were young, did y'all, when you were younger, when you thought of the past, you thought of black and white until you thought in color?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I had that. I kind of had that. I don't know. Like if they were thinking, if they were talking about civil rights or something, I would think of everything in black and white.
Oh.
Until I was like, oh, wait, things weren't black and white like 20 years ago or whatever. But yeah, like there's a lot of black people who like wished for like a moment in time or something like that where they were white, and I don't think it's really like basically, in other words, they're saying I wish that I didn't have to go through this cultural oppression and hardships that I have to go through with the skin color that I have. With me, I love being black. I don't think I've ever regretted it, and if I did, that is gone away. Like I've always loved and known who I was and known the hardships that go with it. I say I love being black. It's very unfortunate that we had to go through this because we shouldn't have and we did not deserve it. But I'm going to take ownership of it. But I'm not gonna wish to change myself because I don't want to be associated with that. And I think that's so funny because like a lot of like white people might be like trying to act black or this is this, but they're everything but the skin color. Like they can, or like, even when people did minstrel shows back in the day, and you could take that off. We can't take this off. Even if you bleach, even if you damage yourself, your DNA is still there, and you know that. You can't take that away.
Yeah.
So it really does hurt when there's like something that you just know, because like sexuality is fluid, gender is fluid, skin color is
not fluid.
Like there's different shades, but like you can't be like pink, green, like no. So that's why that is heartbreaking. To when I really hear minorities say like, oh, I just wish, or they act like they hate their race. They don't identify with it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I experienced that when I was younger, and there was a turning point for me at like in the middle of high school. I think it was around the time I literally became politically aware, and I started thinking about the idea. This is like my sophomore year of high school, and I was like, I'm not helping at all by trying to be this white person. I'm not helping at all, and that's when I started realizing I was like, I need to start incorporating my like life, and then that's also when I started realizing I was like, I act like a completely different person when I'm around my cousins, and sometimes I feel happier when I'm around my cousins because I just get to be. And when I was around my friends, like yes, I got to just be, but it was a learned state of being instead of just a true Nolan.
Right.
So yeah, I definitely experienced an extreme amount of racial dysphoria like when I was younger, and still sometimes experience it a lot. I luckily now I'm thinking about things. I have these ideas now that I don't even have to think about anymore. Like I love when I'm tan now. I'm like, yes! Like I'm like, oh, I could be outside for literally 10 minutes and my face like changes a different shade, and I'm like, yes.
I'm so excited.
I'm like, y'all wish, y'all literally wish.
Black people are like, what are y'all doing?
No, literally.
What's going on?
But I love it now, which is great. But yeah.
Good.
Self-love.
Yeah.
Do you mean
Yes.
anything else?
There's a term also that I think we should like familiarize ourselves with, which is cultural dissonance. So this is from The Current. It says cultural dissonance is the sense of discord, disharmony, confusion, or conflict experienced by people in the midst of change in their cultural environment. It plays a heavy role in how one experiences racial imposter syndrome because when one goes through cultural change, it is often unexpected and cannot be understood. Cultural dissonance can be seen in action on a daily basis. For example, the values of one culture clashing with the values of another. Typical clashes usually involve traditions and ethics. And we definitely have touched upon this before, and we just didn't have the term for it completely. But one thing that I really relate this to is the celebration of Dia de los Muertos, right? And I, like I said, was not grown up to really appreciate that culture. I was raised with Christian beliefs and was taught that we should not celebrate Dia de Muertos because it was anti-Christian.
Really?
Yeah. So the first real experience that I actually had with it was here last year when we did the Dia de los Muertos thing last year. We had the ofrenda and everything, and it was really cool. And that was the first actual experience that I had with it, and so I kind of familiarized myself more with it. And of course, we watched Coco and everything.
Coco.
Yeah, my family loves that movie. I don't think my mom does. I don't know, but
Rats.
yeah. But that was the first time that I felt my two cultures really clashing, because I was raised this one way, and then I'm my culture is saying that this is respectful and this is a core belief of that culture. And so I really have felt that collision between those two most of my life. So I'm wondering if you guys have had experiences like that too.
Go.
Oh, thanks. I mean, yeah, similar to in the realm of Dia de los Muertos is brujeria, witchcraft, I guess, is deeply rooted in Mexican culture, but it's also very mythological and has connections to folklore and everything like that. So it's a tradition, and it's so funny too because there's so many things that ojo bracelets can be connected to brujeria. When you rub an egg, I don't know, you probably never.
No.
But there's this idea of rubbing an egg. A lot of Spanish or Mexican culture, specifically with my grandparents and everything, that they'll rub an egg on your body if they feel like you have ojo on you, and they'll rub the egg all over your body because it's equated to being sick. If you're just sick out of nowhere, my grandparents will be like, you have ojo, someone gave you ojo, and it just is basically them saying that someone put this bad energy onto me, which caused me to have a physical reaction in being sick. They believe that if you rub the egg on your head, body, stomach, whatever, and then crack the egg into a glass of water, specific physical attributes of the egg yolk itself will tell you if it was true, or if that person had bad intentions, or if it was an accident, whatever. You can look it up if you want to. But that is deeply rooted in brujeria and witchcraft and magic. But my grandparents are as Catholic as they can be, and so it's funny to be I guess I have never been told that it was wrong, but then after doing my own research, I'm like, but y'all got mad when I got tarot cards, but all of a sudden y'all have no problems with me having an ojo bracelet or y'all rubbing an egg on me. I'm like, that's deeply rooted in brujeria too. That's deeply rooted in spirituality. So there's those moments where I'm like, oh, so y'all think it's weird when I use sage or have my tarot cards or crystals, but those things are deeply rooted. Or if I blow cinnamon into my door at the beginning of each month, now y'all think I'm weird all of a sudden. But y'all rubbing eggs on me and putting fucking essential oils on my feet thinking it's gonna change my life. So yeah, I have experienced that now that I'm thinking about it, yeah.
What's it called again?
Cultural dissonance.
I don't know, because you're basically talking about when the cultures that are a part of you are clashing.
Yeah.
I don't think I had that, or maybe I just maybe I'm not associating the term with the correct memories. I don't know. But the only thing I can think of, if this counts, is one time me and my friend, she took me to there was like a family friend that was having a wedding, and it was an African wedding. And she was like, "Yeah, you want to go?" And I was like, "Sure." And I got to go, and like with African weddings, they will like party until sunrise. And I clock out at 11. Like,
You're like,
oh Lord. But I couldn't stay up that long anyway. My dad was like, "Hurry up." Anyways, but when I was there, like, they were all just, in the elegant wedding outfits and stuff like that. And the food that they were serving, it was good, but it was also cultural food. So I've never had it before, but I was interested because I love to try new things. And, I didn't really talk to anyone unless she was like, "Oh, this is my friend Sinai," because they were like, "Who is this with you?" But even though I am Black like them, I feel like the way I speak, because I don't have that dialect, is a direct indicator that there's something different about me from them. Because yes, like people with the African dialect can switch to the American dialect, but like, they might do that in certain settings. So if I'm not switching to like, oh, this natural dialect, then you obviously understand that I'm not directly tied with my African roots. So you understand there's this cultural difference. But you see, oh, she's a sweet girl and stuff. So like everyone was partying, and sometimes she would have to go to talk to people and stuff like that. And I would just sit there and I would just think, like, this is so cool, this is so fun, but like, I can't have that unless a future relationship of mine ties me with their family, like not even just like romantically, but like, yeah, even more friendships. Yeah, so that, I guess that's the closest thing to like.
So have they conflicted with so they have conflicted with each other? Like one was saying that the other is wrong, and the other was saying the other was wrong, or?
No, I
guess
I haven't had that then. No, I think it was just an internal conflict in the sense that I was just like, I saw what my life could be like if I had direct ties, or if my family lineage was directly from there. But I was a guest. I was a guest, not just in the sense that I'm not a part of that family, but I was a guest in the sense that if she also invited a white friend to go, I would probably more associate with what she was feeling than what they were feeling. I'd be like, "Girl, yeah, like we're both new to this," but like, yeah, I don't know. So I guess I haven't directly had that, but that's just the memory that popped into my head.
I don't have any more like questions.
Yeah.
But I mean, as we're kind of like, if we're starting to close out.
Yeah, we'll probably start wrapping up.
Yeah.
Ray hates when episodes are over an hour long, apparently.
But I just like, it's very, very important to remember that like you don't need to prove yourself. And I think that's something that we all struggle with so much, especially in this industry. Like you don't need to prove you're like enough of a certain culture. And of course, like, keep in touch with your boundaries and your like your virtues and everything like that. The little quote that I wanted to close out with, and y'all can like speak on this too, but I just really, really liked this take from The Current, which is what I got a lot of my stuff from today. But they say, the inconsistencies in the social construction of race are evident when mixed race people find themselves in the in-between spaces of culture, identity, and belonging. Just because someone doesn't live up to the expectations of their culture and society doesn't make them any less of who they are. Yeah. And I think that's just so important to remember because, like I said, we all struggle with that a lot.
I think that connects to like everything. And we were talking after our conversation about femininity. I think one thing I talked to Natalie Davis, Lawson, oh my gosh, she's married. Sorry. We talked about on the way home is we're talking about the idea that if you equate femininity to womanhood and a uterus, and you're basically saying that any woman who has is lacking in a reproductive system or can't procreate is any less of a woman,
Mm.
right? And so I think that there is a sense of pride, and like you say, there should be a sense of pride in everything that you do, and just because you're not 1000% incorporated into everything doesn't mean you're any less than of it, you know? Like, I guess if you want to think about it in stupid theater kid terms, you're still a theater kid even though you're not in a show, you know? Like, like you're still a theater kid at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, whatever.
That quote, yeah, that even if you're not in the theater show. But yeah, I guess the thing that like, cause I am a big advocate on like, you know, you be you, you do you. Like if the labels were removed, they would still be you. Da 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 da.
Yeah.
But I think it's not. I think what a lot of Black people are looking for is approval from the African culture. But there's not one person that can speak for the whole community.
Exactly.
That's the thing. But like, you know, because I wouldn't be surprised if there's like African people out there who like have conflict with Black people and be like, no, you can't do this. This is this. We're different. And then there's some that are like, no, girl, you can do this. Like, if I wanted to learn an African dance, I'll learn an African dance. Like, I'll learn all types of dances. If I wanted to learn the language, I'll learn the language. I want to learn all types of languages. If I want to get African like patterned apparel, I might get that. But there's still some things that I'm just questioning if it's okay. And I just need to see over time if society is going to still like be sensitive about that subject or not, because like
I think I just need each culture to release a statement saying
come on, like
it's
please,
okay.
Constitution,
Please,
Well,
where's your
especially
infograph? Where's your info square? Like, I
Come
need
on.
it.
Well, especially with like the melting pot that the world is today of cultures, it's kind of unfair to expect people of mixed cultures, mixed race, to be completely attuned to each one of those cultures and to like represent them fully.
Yeah.
That's a whole another topic.
Yeah.
Feeling like you're like when you're a minority or if you're in a certain group of whatever, not just race.
The
You feel
pressure
like
of
the pressure. You feel like you have to be a representative. You have to be put on a pedestal when you just wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to be the leader of a charge for every single thing. Like this is just a trait about me. That's it. That's a whole conversation.
That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, but I think this was
Write it
very
down.
beneficial.
Okay, I think we can close it out. Again, this is The Dip. That was your scoop. My name is Nolan.
I'm Victoria.
I'm Sanai.
And Ray's behind the camera. Thank you guys so much for listening. We love you.
Bye. Stay true to you.